Hey guys, I'm in Brooklyn, New York. I'm looking at the Benno Boost E 10D. This is a really interesting bike. You know, it's kind of like a cargo bike. It's got this really awesome rack in the back. Really oversized tires. These are 24-inch versus 26 or 29, so a little bit smaller diameter. And, you know, very wide tires. They're like 2.6. So, you know, the new fat tires, like the really big ones, are 4 inches, and then there's the plus size tires that are 3 inches. So 2.6, you know, you get a close look at these things. They're pretty hefty, pretty solid. Steel fork, aluminum frame. And I'm mentioning all this because, you know, comfort's something I think about a lot when you're riding in a city where there's, you know, curbs and bumps and cracks and stuff. And if you're going the distance, especially if you're trying to balance stuff, there's a trade-off between stiffness of the frame and comfort of your body. And I feel like they've done a really good job with this one. And a lot of it has to do with just the, you know, the saddle here. This is kind of decent. Benno branded. It's kind of this like faux leather or, you know, whatever, a little bit wider, but fairly cushiony. And it's got this handle for lifting the bike up and moving it around. Riser bars over here with locking ergonomic grips. So the risers, they can be tilted a little bit. The stem is really pretty short, and it creates a little bit more of an upright body position. That combined with the tires, the fork I'm talking about, it actually works pretty well. One thing that I frequently call out on hardtails and other commuter bikes is seat post diameter. So I think this is like 31.2, which is a diameter I'm not as familiar with. Usually it's like 31.6. I hope I'm getting that right. All the specs are back at the website: standover height, length, all that stuff. This was just a curiosity to me. It's the first time I've seen the brand Benno. And, you know, again, this really awesome rack. It's got a kind of standard gauge tubing here for hanging a pannier, or maybe a really long pannier. I looked on their website and they do sell, like, you know, branded panniers that are really big that come in pairs and look really good. They also have a Yep child seat adapter, so you could, you know, mount one on the back. I don't know if you could get two or not. They do say, you know, maximum load on this 50 kilograms, 110 pounds. So this is, you know, most bike racks are like 55 pound max. And I love that this one also acts as kind of a support for these fenders. They're oversized, they're aluminum, integrated lights, Supernova, 3 LED in the rear. And then we got the very popular, it's like the E3 e-bike V6S up front, adjustable angle, even aside from the display, because the display can tilt. Bosch display, removable. It's even got a little USB power port on the side. So it's all the premium stuff that I'm used to seeing, and just kind of like arranged a little bit differently. And I don't know, it comes in a few different colors. This is sort of like the putty color that blends in nicely, kind of just, it's like this premium thing that kind of blends in, that's tough, that's, you know, it's doing some really interesting things. I want to call out the slap guard here. I'm glad that they added this. It doesn't quite extend all the way, so you might still get some chips, or you could slide this back and forth. I think right now it's kind of lined up so that there's this opening, this cutaway for the bolt. I mean, to have a custom slap guard like this is pretty nice. And there's these extra bolts. It's not clear exactly what those would be used for, but maybe in the future we'll see more racks. They do have kind of a porter rack that goes up front and attaches right here to the head tube, so that when you steer, the rack is not flopping around, and when you park, it's not going to dump it. This is like how you want to do it. That's sturdy, and they sell a bag that goes right in that rack as well. So this really is, it's like a capable cargo bike. It's just not as long. It's not quite as, I don't know, and there haven't been a lot of, you know, mid-drive cargo bikes with the Bosch system. I think there's like an extra cycle, and you know, I'm a fan of them. They've done a good job, but it is a little bit longer. I think it has the smaller wheel in the back too, so sometimes, you know, when you go over curbs and stuff, it kind of lowers the frame, and you can potentially collide with the derailleur a little bit easier. So this is a 10 sprockets back here, 10-speed Shimano Dior, and I think it's, you know, 11 to 34 teeth. And at first I was like, that's, you know, I was surprised you didn't have like one of the granny gears, like a climbing gear on the back. But then I looked up front, and this is a 20-tooth sprocket in the front. Okay, so it is geared a little bit more for, I don't know, I guess just maintaining the 20 mile per hour top speed versus being like a real super climber like mountain bikes and stuff. They've got this really nice color matched but plastic kind of a chain ring guard, like bash guard. And most of the time on the mountain bikes with Bosch, I've seen like a metal one. So for me, that was kind of like, well, you know, maybe it doesn't need to be metal, and it's pretty tight in there. It's a FSA chainring, just interesting. I guess I'm just kind of taking it in. VP pedals, I like these. Normally I'm calling out the big Welgo ones, but these are also really wide, pretty good traction bumps, reflectors and everything. Got the fender up front again. And then the disc brakes, we got hydraulic disc brakes, Shimano, 180 millimeter up front with quick release, 160 in the rear, also quick release. Looks like just the standard 9 millimeter skewers. So we don't have through axles or anything, but still, you know, tough enough. Center mount kickstand, and I think, you know, even though it's kind of at the center, it's still just clear of the crank arm and the pedal, which I appreciate. You know, for basically when you're parking, you're backing it up, you don't want those things to collide. And here we go, Shimano Dior levers, and I think they even have adjustable reach maybe if you get in there. Yeah, just interesting. I'm actually here with Chris Nolte from Propel Electric Bikes in New York.
Hey guys.
Hey, and this is one of your bikes that you're carrying now, so.
Right, we're very excited about it. Benno he was the co-founder of Electra, and they've always made great bikes, and they were one of the most popular bikes in the country. And he went on, after Electra was sold to Trek, you know, he kind of still had that urge, and he created these bikes. And they're really amazing. It's just very well thought out, and you could tell it's designed and built by somebody that actually rides and thinks about bikes and as transportation and utility and that sort of thing.
I appreciate you jumping in on that, Chris, because you know, I approach the bike sometimes not knowing a whole lot of background and just being like, wow, that's neat. And you know, I'd asked you, like, geez, this guy's got branded grips, branded saddle, even the tires say Benno. And in my experience, you know, you got to pay more for that, or you got to be someone with some clout in the industry and you know, have some good contacts. Yeah. So this isn't the same as just like brand new company no one's ever heard of. Yeah, it's new, but it's kind of someone who knows their stuff.
And you could tell by the quality that, you know, this really knew what he was doing to make this bike.
Let me point out a couple other things, you know, on the quality front. So we've got internally routed cabling right here. We've got the stainless eyelets and nipples on the rims there, so you don't get the cracking. I was talking about 24-inch wheels here versus 26 or something, and it seems like, you know, again, I've measured the standover height, but it keeps the bike a little bit lower, more stable, and they tend to be tougher because they aren't so big. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a tough bike, and you know, you don't have as long as spokes, as, you know, much flex and that sort of thing. So,
do you guys replace spokes for people at your shop, or what's your experience? I mean, these are like 14 gauge; they aren't super thick.
Yeah,
they're a little flexier.
The great thing, like with the center drive motor like this, not having the hub inside the wheel, you know, you have a lot more strength in the wheel. I guess, you know, when you have a hub motor, the wheel could tend to be a little bit more brittle.
Yeah, that's a great point. So this keeps the weight of the motor and the battery low in center. I talked about the quick release earlier. You know, one of the big draws on this bike is that it isn't quite so long, and that it's maybe a little bit more portable, and it's light too. I weighed this thing, it was only 57 pounds, and right. That's not bad for a bike that looks this like beefy and with big tires and stuff. A lot of electric bikes that I review are in the like 50 to 60 pound range, so this is right there, you know, 57 pounds.
Right, and it's still very capable. You know, it could carry 100 pounds on the back, you know, plus the rider weight, and then you have the ability to add that front rack and carry some more weight. You could really do a lot with it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna jump in and talk a little bit about you know, how this thing works. So the battery's locking, it's removable. You can charge it on or off the frame right here, and that's nice. You know, Bosch, as a premium electric bike like systems maker, and they've got a new battery pack that's 500 watt hour, so you could, it's like backwards compatible, which is kind of neat. They didn't have room for bottle cages or anything, unfortunately, but you get a trunk bag or something. There's, you know, even some of the handlebar mounts or under the saddle, it's workable. Yeah, that's worth keeping in mind. The motor down here, it's 350 watt nominal, 63 newton meters of peak torque output, and this thing will get you, you know, 30 plus miles per charge. That's even with someone a little bit bigger, maybe climbing and stuff. It's pretty capable. If you're on, you know, just the flats and you're in the 170 pound range in like ideal conditions, it's not too windy, this can be like 60 plus miles on the lower levels of assist. It measures your wheel speed, pedal cadence and your pedal torque. So it's one of the more sophisticated motor systems for electric bikes. And it measures those things about 1,000 times per second. So, when we're doing the ride test later, you'll be able to see that chainring just stop, like right when I stop. And that's a really good feeling, especially with traffic and stuff. And then having those hydraulic disc brakes, it all adds up to a good experience. So to turn this thing on, you press the power button right here on the display. It comes to life. We're looking pretty full right now. We got 5 ticks in our battery bar, speed, and then down here we've got a bunch of different readouts. You can press the I or over here, and that's one of the great things. They've got that remote button pad, so you don't have to take your hands off the grips while you're riding. You just interact with it. So we got clock, max speed, average speed, trip time, odometer, trip distance. And then if we get back here to range, this is really cool. As you change assist levels, it estimates how far it thinks you can go. So I'm going to arrow up to eco. That's the lowest, and there we go. There's our 60 miles that I was talking about, and that's realistic in my experience. Up to turbo, and it's like, 25 miles, 21 miles. It sort of depends on how you've been riding. It actually takes all of that into consideration. Love that the display is removable and that the battery is removable, because it's more compact. It's kind of like a crossover cargo bike, but it's still kind of big, and you might lock the frame outside and then take the expensive, delicate bits inside to charge or to stow. Love that they've got the integrated lights. I mentioned the Supernova in the back, and then this one up front. They all run off that main battery. So if you press this light bulb button, the display's backlit, and then those lights come online, front and rear. Good thing for safety. It'd be nice if it had some reflective sidewall stripes on those tires or something. And if you have panniers, a lot of times they have reflective tape on them. It's just you want to be visible. I like the taupe color that we're looking at here because it is a little bit brighter. But the other colors are, I think, also kind of fun. I think there's like a yellow. So yeah, that's a good look at this thing. I think I'm gonna hop on and get going. We've been seeing a few snowflakes earlier, and I'm here with my fingerless gloves to try to work the cameras and everything. It's a little chilly. Definitely makes you appreciate those fenders when it gets wet, and just the comfort of this thing when you're driving in traffic and being able to kind of spot the cars and stuff. So you ready to go, Chris?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm just gonna hop on this thing. I'm way up in turbo mode so you can hear the motor, and I'm also gonna try to demonstrate how responsive it is. Pretty soon I'm up to a higher RPM. There's this fun little arrow that shows up right there on the display panel, upper left corner, and that's called shift's recommendation. So what it's trying to do is tell me, hey, you're not really getting optimal performance. The motor's reaching its highest RPM. Shift up to help enable it. I don't know if it's really necessary. Like, I kind of know when I'm pedaling too fast, but I do want to call out that the Bosch system has one of the more wider ranges of operation, so I don't have to go at a slow lumbering pace as I do with Yamaha and some of the other ones. I can spin fast, and I like to spin fast because I have a sensitive knee. Sometimes that just helps me to get up that hill or stay warm. And it also has it's kind of like a shift sensing, so that it doesn't mash the gears as much when you shift those gears. Okay, so I'm gonna do some riding, and you can just, watch for shifting, listen for that shift sensing, see the responsiveness of the motor. One of the other things I think would be cool to add to this bike is like a nice bell. You're out on town and signaling to people. I also feel like the smaller wheels, it's pretty nimble. You've got a pretty tight turning radius, but sometimes when you're steering, it's just quicker, versus the big 26-inch plus size wheels. So yeah. handle at the back though for just repositioning the rear. Works out pretty well. And that might get messed up if you have a suspension seat post. You know, they're just not as strong as a standard post. That upright position I was talking about before. See if Chris will come over here and trade. Want to do a trade with me?
Sounds good.
Sweet. Looking good. Just gonna go behind you. Sweet, man. Okay, so Chris and I were having a little conversation here about the chain rings and the sprocket sizes and the cassette back there. And what were you saying about?
Yeah, so one of the things, this has a 24-inch wheel, so it's a smaller wheel size.
Yeah.
So generally, you need a little bit of larger cog in the front to kind of keep the same sort of.
And that's exactly it. That's I was, sometimes I get hung up on stuff and I'm trying to figure it out on the fly a little bit. And we see that on folding bikes, with the 20-inch wheels, that they do often have a larger chain ring. And so that's what they've done here. And it does ride well. Like, we haven't been pulling anything around. We thought about, putting me on the rack back here, but it does say, 110 max. I'm like 135, so we don't want to push it too much. But, thanks, Chris. It's neat to get just some insight from an expert that way, and that this is really, really well thought out. It's been fun, kind of exhilarating being in a different environment, appreciating the city and the cooler riding and stuff. As I mentioned before, I'll have all the specs back at the website. I really went deep on this thing to try to get the details and stuff for you. If you get one of these, you have some feedback about it, chime in. Maybe you have some recommendations on the racks, or, in the future, it sounds like we might see new racks and some other accessories. I'm excited about Benno. Good job. Glad he's still in the industry making some cool stuff. I think that's about it. Ride safe.